Pro Football Focus's Eric Eager. He is our mock drafter of the week. Eric, thank you for the time this morning. Much appreciated.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
Now, it's no surprise that our producer Robbie found you and likes your style, because the way we've had a lot of different styles of our mock drafter of the week coming up, but yours is an interesting style of how you put your mock draft together. You are going by betting odds, is that correct?
Yeah, mostly. A little bit of editorial there, as the Miami Dolphins fans will see.
So is this something? Have you been doing this on the reg? Like, how did you come up with this idea to put a draft together like this based on odds?
Well, I think that there's actually, I mean, this time of year, if you're only a football fan, other than betting FCS, which I think is like a level of degeneracy most people are not willing to cross. Like the only betting you can really do is the draft props. And so I've been sort of looking at the market, seeing sort of how the odds have evolved. I'm like, I think you could actually make a mock draft out of this. So then I went through and did such a thing. And obviously, just standard, the odds changed for the number 3 pick probably an hour or two after we filed this. So I thought it was a decent approach to try to get sort of like where, the wisdom of the crowds, sort of was landing.
When you say a different type of degenerate, like, are you betting FCS? Because our producer's a different kind of degenerate. He'll bet FCS. He's telling us all the time about, like, North Dakota State or something like that. Like, do you partake in that level of degeneracy?
It takes one to know one, yeah. That's for sure.
There you go. I like it.
Eric, how does the betting work? So say, for example, you said it changed right away. Was that after a trade? Does it go by player getting drafted? Or does that player have to be drafted by that team?
Yeah, it's kind of a combination of all those things. So, for example, with the number 4 pick, I had Kyle Pitts. The reason I put Kyle Pitts there was he was the favorite to go to Atlanta. He was also the favorite to be the first non-quarterback taken, and then he was also the favorite. His over/under was 5.5. So you think about him going before the 5th pick. The Bengals kind of have tipped their hand a little bit that they want Penei Sewell. So for everything to be consistent there, either the betting markets are wrong, which is certainly possible, or Kyle Pitts has to go to 4 to Atlanta, presuming that everybody is assuming that the Niners traded up for a quarterback. And then you look at that 3rd pick. When I wrote this, Fields was the favorite to go at number 3, followed closely by Mac Jones. And then when Schefter tweeted out that the Niners were seriously considering Mac Jones, then the numbers made Mac Jones the favorite. So that's kind of how like both fluid these are and how you sort of have to interpret them.
I was going to ask, like, with all the smoke screens that go on, and then like with Mac Jones having like the viral clip of like hitting the roof and Belichick shaking his head, like, does like a bad pro day or a good pro day, can that swing the odds as well? Excuse me.
Yeah, for sure. I know, like 2 weeks ago, Gregory Rousseau of Miami was the favorite to be the first defensive lineman chosen. And, guys like Jason Away, Jalen Phillips of Miami as well, and then Kwity Paye, who's now the favorite, they all tested a lot better than Gregory Rousseau did. And so those changed the odds quite a bit to the point that I think Rousseau is something like 8-1 to be the first defensive lineman chosen. And so they do matter quite a bit, especially for positions where athleticism matters a lot more. So, obviously a pro day doesn't really matter that much for a quarterback statistically, but for edge players, it absolutely matters. There are players like Danielle Hunter who got like 3.5 sacks in college, but like were freaks when they were tested and have turned out to be pretty good pros as far as that's concerned. So for positions like that, you're absolutely going to see changes when they test.
Now, you said, as you said in your piece, so you took a little liberty with the number 6 pick where the Dolphins land now after their trades, and you have Denver now trading with Miami. So what made you kind of get wacky with it? Why do you have Denver moving up, or really I should say, why do you have the Dolphins trading out, and then what do you have the Dolphins doing based on your system?
Yeah, so at the time Jones' over under was 6.5, so he was going to be picked before pick 6 in all likelihood. And, as the board was playing out, I'm like, well, if he doesn't go to, some team trading with the Dolphins who have shown a proclivity for trading, then he might fall away to 9, which then Lance falls. And Lance does fall in this mock further than the markets would assume he would. But the other thing is I have a very high regard for the Dolphins. I think they're an extremely smart team. I mean, to 2019, they were legitimately not tanking, but they were not trying to win every game. Like, they didn't have a roster that was winnable with, right? And they've turned it around all the way to now where I think that they're one of the better football teams in the AFC. And to me, the trade back with San Francisco netted them a ton of value. And the trade up to 6 actually was negative EV. Like, that was a good trade for Philadelphia. To me, I think the Dolphins are not trading up to 6 just to take a player. They're trading up to 6 to have the position the way that it played out, which is quarterback, and then Atlanta takes a non-quarterback. Cincy takes Sewell, and then you're sitting there at 6, and a desperate team like the Denver Broncos, who's in many ways a quarterback away. Now you have an opportunity to accumulate more capital. I think that's the way the Dolphins roll, and I respect it. And then to me, I could see them taking Jamar Chase at 6. I really could. But if you're sitting there at 6 and you're like, okay, well, if we trade that pick for a quarterback, then it goes 7, 8, 9. We're still going to get a really good football player at 9, and we're going to accumulate more picks, which they've done wonders with over the past couple of years.
Wow. I like that, Leroy.
Yeah,
So that's a chess move from Greer.
But besides the whole offensive line thing, I mean, it seems like over the last couple of years, if you've been paying attention, this is all the Dolphins have done is that, it almost seems like their goal is to not only get younger, but have more opportunities for these guys to be successful. So if you want to have a successful first rounder, have 3 first rounders, not just have one and who you pick. And so they've gone with, success by numbers rather than, making sure they draft, the guy who's going to be a definite pro.
And that's the right approach. I mean, if you look historically, there really hasn't been a team, even Bill Belichick, right, who you played for, right? Like there isn't a GM who is better at, say, using the 15th pick than anybody else. It is a crapshoot, and so when you're at the tables, you just want to have more bets. And you look at, and we all make fun of Cleveland because they did this from 2016 all the way to now. And eventually enough of those things turned over heads, right? And now
Right.
They're one of the better teams in the AFC, not because they're better at picking the right players, but because they picked enough players where by chance alone, some of them became great. And if you were willing, as the Dolphins were in 2019 and the Browns were seemingly ever, to sort of lose a little bit at the very, very beginning of it, and then you look up one day and all of a sudden in the Browns case, you have Myles Garrett, you have Jarvis Landry, you have now a great secondary, all that cap space, by the way, no mistake, because you only had to pay rookie deal guys for a few years. You have a great football team, offensive line built well, all that kind of stuff. You have a ton of freedom. I think the Dolphins are sort of chasing that as well, where you look at last year's draft, like Noah Igbenogany was a bust, but it sort of washes away in everybody's thoughts because they ended up with Tua and they ended up with Jackson. And then and that's kind of how it goes. Like first round corners bust all the time. If you're Detroit and that was the only pick you had, then it's a failure. If you're Miami and that's one of 3 picks, that's okay. It's not the worst thing in the world.
What's your take on Tua, by the way?
Oh no! All right.
I think Tua played in the wrong offense last year. If you look at the way, like Devontae Parker is a Ryan Fitzpatrick wide receiver. He's a down the sideline, throw to the back shoulder. I think that the wide receivers if you look at the way Tua threw the ball in Alabama, it was over right in front of his face. So the crossers and the kind of Mike Gesicki stuff, and Gesicki didn't emerge after Tua took over. I think Devontae Smith would be a very good player for him. And while the part of me does think you should try, you should swing the bat a few more times at quarterback before you really buy into one. I don't think just after a couple times being benched as a rookie, we should all give up on him.
And you have the Dolphins taking Devontae in your mock draft after this trade with the Broncos. How that's also been a hot debate down here: Jamar Chase versus Devontae Smith. If they would stick in that sixth position and they had their choice to, why? Where is the odds kind of swung on Jamar Chase, Devontae? Like, did it swing from Devontae's time of the season ending to pro days and the size questions with that, and just, I guess, all in all, how did you land on them with Devontae Smith over Jamar Chase in this situation?
Well, at the beginning of the offseason, Chase was a favorite, but he was sort of a small favorite. Now, to be picked first wide receiver, now he's a big favorite. He's about 80% break even to be the first wide receiver taken. So unless there's a huge upset, Chase is going to be the first one off the board. And then you sort of have, the over-under for draft position for both Smith and his teammate Jalen Waddle is 11.5. So if Smith went at 9, it would be before where people expect him to go, which is interesting because, and this happened last season, by the way, I personally view brilliant wide receivers as more valuable than maybe the NFL does. Last season he had Ruggs, Judy, and Lamb, and they all went in the teens. And I sort of wish they would have gone maybe before the first 12 picks, just because of how much value they could have added. I think that's what you're going to see here. Chase going at 7, I think, is a lot later than people believe. And then Smith going at 9, and then I believe I have Waddle at 13. Like, that's later than I think most of the consensus, what I would want. But I believe that's how the NFL operates. So, and that's a good thing for the Dolphins because they're going to have a ton of options at that position. And that's really one of the positions where you look and say, okay, this could really help Tua. And in my opinion, I think Smith is the better fit, which is why the trade down makes a little bit more sense.
He's Eric Eager. Check him on out. Pro Football Focus. Fascinating look at how he's doing his mock draft.
Yeah.
A lot of fun. And no wonder Robbie found him, because as Robbie the Degenerate, appropriately named, loves him some action. I'm sure, Robbie, you're going to be betting the draft now? Like, is this going to be a thing? You're going to be drafting positions?
I always bet the draft anyways. And now I'm going to crank up the FCS betting too.
Thanks for the time, Eric. Appreciate it, man.
Thanks for having me on, guys.